The love of underage people has always been something that people have tried to stay away from in film. But when you make a remake of a Stanley Kubrick film that focuses on it, you'd better make sure you do it right. That's where 1997's Lolita comes in. Spoiler alert, for those of you who haven't seen the film, the link for the movie will be in the description. As we watch a car drive through the countryside, it's clear that our story takes place in the 1940s. Humbert begins to run off the road, and we see his revolver slide around on the passenger seat. His bloody hand reaches out to steady it, and he swerves even more as oncoming traffic just barely misses him. As he talks about Lolita, we jump back to 1921 when he meets Annabelle, his first love when he was 14, and according to him, she started it all for him. The two of them fell madly in love, but she died of typhus 4 months later. After experiencing loss like that, Humbert describes that long after she was gone, he continued looking for her everywhere. In 1947, Humbert accepted a job teaching at a college in New England. Once he arrives, he finds out that the house he was originally going to stay at had recently burned down. So he accepts the offer of a friend, Charlotte, to stay with her in town. As Charlotte welcomes him to her home, she gives him the grand tour, and it's in the backyard that he sees Dolores, also known as his Lolita. Once he catches sight of her, he decides that he will in fact be staying there. Once Dolores sees him, she smiles at him, and he glows with happiness as he watches her from afar. While he sits up in his room, he consistently watches Dolores with her friends down in the yard, and he cherishes the little brushes he can get when she walks by. One night, when he's working in his room, Dolores comes to his room in her pajamas, and he can't help but follow her when she leaves. As he makes his way downstairs, he finds Dolores in the kitchen munching on food in the refrigerator. Humbert's room is connected to hers through the bathroom that they share, and he watches her through the doors, hoping for some disaster to eliminate her mother and the surrounding neighbors. Anything so that it could just be them alone. As he ventures into his office one day, she proceeds to sit on his lap and ask him questions to keep his interest. As her mother pops upstairs, Dolores rushes to her room so she isn't caught in there. As time goes on, the three housemates end up spending more time together, and Dolores ends up getting even cozier with Humbert in front of her mother. While her mother constantly tries to get his attention, Dolores ends up stealing the show no matter what she does. With each touch of his leg and the slip of skin, he falls farther into her web of temptation. After Humbert spends some one-on-one time with Charlotte, he finds out that she plans to send Dolores to summer camp, then a boarding school to stay. On the day that she's sent off, she runs back inside just in time to leap into Humbert's arms and kiss him passionately. As he watches her drive off, he steps back in wonderment of what just happened. Later on, Dolores sends a letter back home to Humbert. In it, she confesses her love for him, and asks him to leave before she returns because that would signify that he wanted her as much as she wanted him. In response, Humbert marries her mother within 2 weeks, and Charlotte makes sure that Dolores is not present at the ceremony. As the two of them get through the first 6 weeks of marriage, Humbert gives her sleeping pills so that he doesn't have to sleep with her, but that doesn't always work. One day when he comes home, he finds that Charlotte has found the locked up love letters and diary that he keeps that confesses his love for Dolores. Charlotte tells him that she's leaving that night, but she vows that he will never see Dolores again in his life. As he goes to make them a drink and try to calm her down, he gets a phone call from a neighbor that says Charlotte has been killed, and when he goes back to check on her, he finds that she's gone. As Humbert runs out, he sees a terrible accident has occurred where Charlotte ran out in front of a car who struck her. As he stood there looking down at his dead wife, a little girl walks up and hands him letters that Charlotte was walking to the mailbox to mail. Once he goes inside, he notices the lock on his desk that Charlotte had picked. Then he packs up and leaves to meet with Dolores. Humbert pulls into Dolores' camp, and when he sees her walking down the trail, his whole world brightens up. He tells her that her mother is in the hospital with complications, but he leaves out the fact that she's already dead. They pull over so they can make out, but their time is quickly brought to a halt as a police officer pulls up asking about another car. Once they arrive at the hotel, Dolores runs into another interesting man while she waits for Humbert to check them in. Afterwards, Dolores and Humbert go up to the room, and he leaves her to get some sleep. As he walks down the steps to the hotel lobby, he's heard narrating to a jury that he wishes he had left town that night. As Humbert goes outside, he runs into the same man that Dolores met in the lobby earlier. He asks Humbert for him and Dolores to join him tomorrow, but Humbert declines as the man asks more questions of who she is to him. After telling the man goodnight, Humbert wanders back upstairs to his sleeping Dolores. The next morning, the two lovers gaze into each other's eyes as they passionately kiss. Humbert can barely contain his elation as Dolores unties his pants to show him exactly what she did at camp. The screen blacks out as he tells the jury that he wasn't even her first lover. Dolores asks for a gas station as they drive, and she teases about how she could call the police and tell them that he raped her. Once they arrive at the gas station, Humbert becomes more and more uncomfortable with the situation. And once Dolores returns to the car, he explains to her that her mother actually died. That night, Dolores cries her heart out, and Humbert comforts her through the trying time. After that, the two of them begin to travel the country. As the two of them continue to live in a seemingly fragile heaven, eventually they make it to the college that Humbert will be accepting the teaching job at. The school focuses more on interactions and expression, and at home, Humbert is living the dual life of a romantic corrupter and happy housewife. As Dolores talks about doing a play at school, Humbert tells her it isn't a good idea since the boys will be a part of it too. But Dolores is quickly finding out that she has something that he wants. She begins to use her womanly wiles to convince Humbert to see things her way. Naturally, Humbert gives in and lets her be in the school play. But when he goes to watch a rehearsal, he finds out that the actual playwright is there. It's none other than Quitely, the man that they encountered in the first hotel earlier in their travels. The more they encounter romantic tiffs, the more she thinks she can ask for money while in the middle of pleasurable moments. Humbert admits that he never knew where she hid the money she got out of him, but she became more and more aggressive towards him. As time goes on, Humbert becomes more paranoid that Dolores may have told their best friend Mona about the two of them. When he confronts her about it, he tells Dolores that it all needs to stop. But when she plays coy, he demands to know where the money he gave her is. As she screams in his face that she earned that money, he ends up smacking her after she screams about how she plans to run away. After that, she starts to hit him, and screams for him to murder her like he did her mother, and she runs out of the building screaming about how he murdered Charlotte. After he catches up with her, she tells him that she's come to a decision. She wants to leave the prep school and go on another trip, but this time, she wants to choose where they go. Of course, he agrees happily. After they leave on their trip, eventually Humbert realizes that they were being followed. Finally, at one of the gas stations they stop at, Humbert sees Dolores talking to a man that approaches the car while he's inside. And when he returns to ask who that was, Dolores simply says he asked for a map. Humbert tries to explain to her that it was the police officer that's been following them, and sure enough, as they continue on their journey, the car begins to follow them again. After Humbert has a blowout, the car pulls up to a stop. As Humbert chases after him, he puts the car into reverse and drives away from them. Once they make it to the next town, Humbert hears on the radio that Mr. Quitely is in the exact same town that they're in. He doesn't see this as a pure coincidence. When he gets back to the room, he sees that Dolores has been out and about, and when he asks who she saw, she simply laughs at him. That night, Humbert has terrible hallucinations that prove his paranoia is off the charts. He gathers his revolver and keeps it on him as they leave to the next location the next day. Once there, Dolores comes down with a virus, and after she feels better the next morning, Humbert calls to speak with her. He learns that another man that fits the description of Mr. Quitely has come to pick her up. He followed the trail of the two of them for quite some time, until he finally lost the trail. Eventually, he returned to the quiet town he was teaching in. After 3 years, Humbert receives a letter from Dolores who tells him that she's pregnant and needs money. He goes to the address marked on the envelope, and when he sees Dolores answer the door, he's amazed by how much she's grown. When he comes in, he searches for the man that took her, but all he finds is her husband. Once Dolores realizes that he's still looking for the man she left him for, she explains to him that it was Mr. Quitely that whole time. After Humbert hears it, it all ends up making perfect sense to him. After hearing how he threw her out because she wouldn't do the lewd things he wanted her to, Humbert seemed to have a sense of ease come over him as he watched her clean up. Even with her pregnant with another man's child, he still just wanted her. He begs her to leave her husband and come with him, but when she calls him crazy for his love, he goes to leave after giving her more than the asked amount of money. Dolores tries to end things cordially, but as Humbert goes to drive off, all he sees is little Lolita waving goodbye to him. It's now that we see him driving through the country, like we saw in the beginning. He apologizes to the jury for everything we've seen so far, but not what happens next. Humbert breaks into Mr. Quitely's house, and as he tries to make him remember what he did to Dolores, the two of them trade some harmful words that make Humbert lose his grip. He shoots Mr. Quitely multiple times, and then he drives off into the countryside, with the police following close behind. As his chase comes to an end on a hill in the countryside, He remembers his Lolita's face as the screen goes black. Before the credits roll, we find out that Humbert died in a prison of coronary thrombosis in November 1950. Lolita died during childbirth on Christmas 1950. While this is a remake of a classic Stanley Kubrick film, the story was retold in a way that fits the time it comes out. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos, comment what you'd like me to watch next, and I'll see you in the next video.